In this video, I'm going to share with you some advanced long exposure techniques so you can capture some truly spectacular long exposures with your iPhone. I think you're going to be absolutely blown away by the kind of images we're going to take today. Now, we're almost at the end of the course, and I wanted to save the best stuff until the very end. I think you'll agree that long exposure photography is one of the most exciting things you can do with the iPhone. For the first section of the video, we're going to be taking long exposure photos in the sea, and after that, we'll head into the city at night where I'll show you how you can do light trail photography with the iPhone. Now, the reason I wanted to come here today is because of these concrete blocks, and I think they're going to provide for some terrific long exposure photography opportunities. So it's a partially cloudy day. We might get some rain later, hopefully not, but it is on the forecast. But what's interesting about this day is that there are going to be clouds coming in and out, in and out. And for this type of photography, it's actually okay to have a cloudy day. But if the sun does peek out from time to time, that sun is actually going to illuminate those blocks. And that could create for some interesting photo opportunities as well. That's enough talking for now. Let's take the first shot. So I've now opened up the camera app of my iPhone, and the first thing I'm going to do is switch to my 2x lens. As I do that, you'll see that I'm so much closer to this one concrete block. I wanted to make it as simple as possible. So I don't want to see the sky, I don't want to see any other blocks. I just want this one block positioned centrally in the frame. Now, at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that Live Photos is on, so that's good. And I'm going to try to keep my iPhone as steady as I can, and I'll now go ahead and press the shutter. I'm going to open the Photos app of my iPhone, and here's the image that we just captured. I'm going to select long exposure. And as I make that choice, you'll see the long exposure image developing, and it looks absolutely stunning. So long exposure is not just for waterfalls. There are many different kinds of long exposure photos that work really, really well, and this is clearly one example of that. With that said, there are a couple of things I have to consider when I convert my live photos into a long exposure. Because what's happening behind the scenes is that the 3-second video that comes recorded with each live photo gets transformed into a long exposure image. So that image is really a composite of that little 3-second video file that gets captured together with the live photo. And unfortunately, that means that the quality of the final image isn't going to be as high as it would be otherwise. So the photo we just created would be perfectly fine for social media, and it is a beautiful photo. But if you want to do some high quality work for print or for an exhibition, for example, then this is probably not going to work. Another problem is that the length of the exposure is fixed. What if I want to do 10, 15, 30 seconds? Well, for that, I can't use live photos because the only option I have with live photos is a 3-second long exposure. If I want any other exposure time, that's not going to work. Now, the good news is that both of these problems can be fixed quite easily using a dedicated long exposure app called Slow Shutter Cam. But for this app, I definitely need to use a tripod. So I'm going to set up my tripod right now. Okay, so now my iPhone is in a tripod, and I've already opened the Slow Shutter Cam app. So I need to switch to 2x. On the right-hand side, you'll see that there's this circular icon that says 1x. And if I tap my finger there, I'm now switched over to my 2x lens. And I'm going to quickly adjust composition just a little bit, just like this. By default, the app is set up in such a way where you're going to get a really low quality image. We don't want that. So to go into settings, I'm going to tap on this icon at the bottom left-hand corner. And here, the first thing I want to change is photo resolution. We're going to select the largest resolution possible, which is 12 megapixels. Next up, I want to change the photo file format. I want to make sure that my photos have more colors and that they take up less space. So I'm going to select HEIF at the bottom, and that's going to be the high efficiency file format. And the next thing I want to enable is the grid. So as I turn that on, I'm going to have those grid lines, and it will make it easier to compose my shots. Another option I want to quickly enable is geotagging. So that's going to essentially save the location of my long exposure photos. All right, so now we have the correct settings. So I'm going to tap Done at the top right-hand corner, and I'm back into the Slow Shutter Cam app. We're almost ready to start shooting, but there's one more thing I need, and that is the white Apple earbuds. So I'm going to plug these into my iPhone, and I'm going to be able to use these as a remote shutter release. When I'm going to hit the shutter, that could actually cause enough movement to cause a blurry image. And I can prevent that if I just use the volume up button on these headphones. So at the top left-hand corner, you're gonna see this icon. And if I tap my finger there, I'm gonna have all these capture options. And at the top, I'm gonna make sure that motion blur is selected. Next up, we have blur strength. So that's how much the app is gonna blur the motion that happens around my subject. So I'm gonna take that blur strength setting and I'm gonna take it all the way to maximum. And for shutter speed, let's see what happens if we do 15 seconds. So I'm happy with these settings and I'm gonna go ahead and release the shutter using my headphones. As that circle around the shutter button gets complete, the exposure will be finished. And look at this image right here. That looks absolutely incredible. All you see here is our subject in the middle of this white nothingness, and clearly selecting the maximum blur strength worked in our favor. But how do I know what's the correct exposure time? There are two ways to go about this. One way is to just try them all and see what works best. But another option that I like even better is to use something known as the bulb mode. Let me show you. So I'm gonna open those settings again, and in the middle where it says shutter speed, if I go all the way to the right, you'll see that now it says bulb. Now with bulb mode, I haven't actually specified the shutter speed at all. Instead, when I press the volume up button on my headphones for the first time, exposure is gonna start, and it will continuously capture the long exposure until I choose to stop it. So right now, with the bulb mode activated, I'm still capturing my image. And at this point, I could leave it on for a minute, for 2 minutes, and honestly, nothing would really change. So this image looks done to me. So I'm gonna press volume up again. And now you can see this beautiful long exposure. So right now, I don't know what the next shot is gonna be. But if I wanna find the best composition possible, it makes sense for me to quickly explore the scene by doing a few handheld long exposures where I'm gonna convert a live photo into long exposure. I'll see if it looks good, and if it does, that's when I'll get out my tripod, set up slow shutter cam, and do high quality long exposure that'll give me the best image possible. All right, I found myself another spot, and this time we're gonna take a photo of that beautiful lighthouse at the end of the pier. Now, if you look at the scene, one of the first things you're gonna see is that the lighthouse is nicely illuminated, but it's not just in the sun, it's actually side-lit. And you can clearly see that because the left-hand side of the lighthouse is illuminated, but the right-hand side is in the shadow, which looks really, really good. At the bottom right-hand corner, I have the same rocks that we were capturing earlier, but this time, they're in a nice composition where the lighthouse is kind of at the top left-hand corner of the image, and those rocks are at the bottom right. But we also have some really special clouds here. I gotta start a capture right now. So I'll press the shutter, and as more and more time goes on, those clouds are moving to the scene from the left to the right, and eventually they're also getting blurred out. Now, I don't want to overdo this. It is possible to keep the shutter open for too long, so I'm gonna stop the capture right here. This looks absolutely stunning. We have all this beautiful motion blur in the sky as well. Now, it's the kind of sky you would never see with your eyes, but with a long exposure, you can get a shot like that. And that's what makes this image so special to me. I'm really happy with the images we were able to capture at this incredible location. I'm gonna hike all the way back, and later tonight, when it starts to get dark, I'll show you how you can capture stunning light trail photos with your iPhone. So here we are at our next location, and for this photo shoot, I'm actually standing on top of this bridge. Below me, there's a big road with a lot of cars, and as those cars drive on that road, they're gonna give me the opportunity to capture light trail photos. But what is a light trail photo? Well, a light trail image is the kind of image where you have some kind of bright lights. If you also have motion in that, and if you do a long exposure, you can blur out those lights to create a really special photo. Now, I know it's kind of confusing, but I'm going to show you exactly how that works in this video. To do light trail photography, it has to be dark outside. I couldn't do this in the middle of the day. So I've come here for the blue hour. The sun has just set maybe 10 minutes ago, and the benefit of shooting in the blue hour is that the image is not going to be completely black. That blue hour is not going to last forever. Typically, the peak of blue hour is only going to be for 10-15 minutes. That's the time when I'll be able to capture the most beautiful photos. If you look at the image I've framed up, I'm actually quite happy with this composition already. So I'm standing right in the middle of that road. Those stripes in the center of the road are right in the middle of my composition as well. So it's a very symmetrical shot. That's good. Now, another thing I like about this specific spot is that down there is a place where cars can do a U-turn. If that happens when I'm taking photos, I'm going to have that U-turn captured as a light trail as well. I think it's going to look really spectacular. Now, on the top right-hand corner, we have the National Library of Latvia. It's the same building we visited in the architecture video, and that building has some lights as well. So that's going to be another interesting detail in my shot. And on the left, we have the President's Palace. And that building is also going to be illuminated in the yellow tone, so it's going to be another color in my shot. It's time to capture the first light trail shot. To do that, I first need to click on the gear icon at the top left-hand corner. Here, we're not going to be shooting with motion blur. Instead, we're going to select the second capture mode, which is light trail. There are a couple of settings that are going to be really important. Number one, light sensitivity. 1/8 is essentially how much of all the lights that I have in that scene will get added to the long exposure. Next up, we have our shutter speed, and I'm going to keep that at bulb. All right, we got all the settings into place, so I'm just going to tap anywhere on the screen to close that capture mode window, and we're now ready to take our first light trail photo. If I start the capture right now, I'm getting a clean scene. So if you can, try to have a clean start of the capture for these light trail images. Now, one car just drove through the scene, and you can see those red taillights, those got blurred out. So I'm getting my first light trails as we speak. Now look at those cars that are driving towards me. As they keep driving, I'm getting all those lights saved as light trails, and that looks absolutely stunning. Now this can be overdone, so I'm going to use this opportunity to end this capture, and now take a look at this image. This is already stunning. So now that we've captured our first light trail, let's see how we could improve this. How can we make this better? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is changing that light sensitivity setting. So to do that, I'm going to tap on the settings icon, and here where it says light sensitivity, instead of 1/8, I'm going to choose 1/4. Those light trails are going to be much brighter. All right, let's start another capture. So I've pressed that shutter, the capture is on, and this looks absolutely stunning. And this time, with that 1/4 for light sensitivity, the light trails are actually much stronger. So I'm going to end the capture right now. You can see that at 1/4, the image got filled up so much faster. So literally within seconds, this image is pretty much complete. And now, if any more cards were added to this, this would no longer improve the photo. It would actually start to get worse. So you never know how long that capture has to be. That's why you have to shoot with bulb mode. So the shots we got so far already look spectacular. But can I make them even better? Is there anything else I could do? This scene and this image is still just a little bit too bright. So one thing I could try to do is set exposure in this image. And to do that, I'm going to simply tap my finger on the screen like this, and you'll see those two icons come up. So the first one is focus, and I'm going to leave focus right here, where those cars are going to make those U-turns. And the second icon is that circle. That's our exposure. So I'm going to pick an exposure point where we have the most lights. So that's right here where those cars are coming from. So I'm going to tap my finger on the right-hand side where it says AE, and now I've locked that exposure on the brightest part of the scene. I can do the same for focus if I want to. Then I simply have to tap the AF icon on the right-hand side, and now both focus and exposure are locked. Now, by locking that exposure on the brightest part of the scene, I've made the image just a tiny bit darker, and that's going to be a higher quality image. It's also going to look better because those light trails are going to stand out more on a darker image. All right, let's start that capture now. I had an empty road. That's the perfect time to start the long exposure. So now the first couple of cars have come on the right-hand side, and you can see those first light trails. But next, a whole bunch of cars are approaching from the left. And you can see the image develop right in front of my eyes. That looks absolutely stunning. But my challenge is, when do I stop this? I don't want to overdo this. I don't need too much of a good thing. And actually, I think when these two cars leave, that's when I'm gonna stop, right now. This looks really cool, actually. We have really strong light trails, both on the left and on the right. And with that 1/4 for light sensitivity, and with that exposure locked, I'm really getting a lot of contrast in that image. Those light trails really stand out now, and you're gonna see that the sky and the river on the right, they're catching that blue tone more and more. So as we're entering the blue hour, this is just getting better and better. I'm gonna wait for a good moment to start this again. This is the peak light. It's the best light of the day. And with the road being completely empty, I'm gonna start it again. All right, there goes the first car on the right. Another car on the right, that's perfect. And now the cars start coming in from the left as well. So there's this one car that kind of took a bit of an unusual trajectory, but it does kind of look interesting. It's originating from the foreground, almost like a leading line. I'm gonna stop it right here. And I like this image because it's so different from all the other shots we captured. And let's do another one. Hopefully this is gonna work out great. Let's see. All right, that U-turn is now complete. So I'm just gonna wait for a couple of cars on the left. And done. This was really lucky. Now, in a situation like this, where I'm capturing the light trails of those cars, I'm not in control. I'm just an observer here. But what I can do is come here early, be prepared, and when I have that peak light, I've got to use every minute to capture the most beautiful photos possible. And that's what we did tonight. There you have it. This is how you can do advanced long exposure photography with your iPhone. Again, if you want to do a quick long exposure, converting a live photo into a long exposure works just fine. I do it all the time and I love those images. But if you want to get the highest quality results possible, you got to use slow shutter cam. And with that app, you have a lot more control. You can control the exposure time. You can choose between different capture modes. You can choose between different blur strengths, light sensitivity. And with all that control, and with all those settings, you can capture some truly remarkable long exposure photos with your iPhone. This video was a free preview of my iPhone Photo Academy online course. In this course, you'll discover everything you need to know to take stunning photos with your iPhone. So if you'd like to take the kind of photos that will leave your friends and family speechless, please take a look at the full version of iPhone Photo Academy. You'll find a link in the description right next to this video. So click on that link right now, and I'll see you inside the full version of the course.